Red Gold and Bold podcast is coming at you live. Remember, if you catch us via the podcast, you can always catch us on the stream. We record 8:30 p.m. We get started on Tuesday nights, unless there's something else going on. Much to get to today here on the Red Gold and Bold, as we're going to talk about Rashee Rice. We're going to go in depth and get to the bottom of what we can expect, as much as you can predict the legal process. We will talk about it with an expert. Eric Barlett joins us from Northland Injury Law. What kind of timeline can we expect on this? Jail time, is that in play? Some people think so. Other people think absolutely it's in play. We'll get his thoughts on that. How much money is this going to cost? All these things. We'll break it down with Eric Barlett from Northland Injury Law, one of our great sponsors here at the Red Gold and Bold podcast. We'll also get reaction to Rashee Rice's first public comments. Andy Reid fielding questions about them drafting Rashee Rice when there were some problems at SMU. What can we expect from him to contribute in 2024? What about for the rest of his career? We're talking about it right now here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red Gold and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red Gold and Bold is hosted by Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeffri Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red Gold and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. Do appreciate it. And thank you for joining us here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast. We're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. We're tackling all things Rashee Rice here. Listen, we finally heard Rashee Rice speak. Not much. Didn't have much to say. But, we're going to get into that a little bit more, whether he helped or hurt his cause with what he said. And we're going to get to the bottom of the legal side of things and find out what, at least an attorney at law thinks we should be expecting.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to talk about this. To devote an entire podcast to Rashee Rice may seem extreme, but it's gotten to that point. And there's so many different elements of this now. And I know that sometimes people think it's like a Law and Order type episode or a Suits where things get resolved really fast. This is going to take some time. It's going to be really complicated. But to have a lawyer come on, a lawyer who actually pays us on top of that is a nice perk to the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to get expert legal advice on our dime, on his dime. You listen, and this is important, Sam, also because you were out of practice today. You said, listen, he's the star of the show. Rashee Rice looks like definitively the best receiver. So any thoughts that, he's not going to be a big part of what they're doing, we can dismiss that right away.
Yeah, I mean, he was today. And, Jeff was out there as well. And to echo what Jeff said, I mean, this is not a fast-moving process because it's typically not a fast-moving process. But those of us covering the team, fans of the team, are left still with more questions about what's next as opposed to answers about what's next. And it does happen just to be, as you just said, a very critical piece of the Chiefs offense this year.
Yeah, they're going to need him. They're practicing. And one of the things we talked about today on the radio show, Sam, was that they're definitely using him, right? Like it's not like they're shying away from whether, we're not going to go get him. We're not going to, run the offense like we're going to run it later in the year. They're running it. The way they're going to run it, ultimately, we're going to find out when we're going to find him back on the football field and when we can expect him to, be contributing the way that they're talking about it. Let's bring in our legal expert, Eric Barlett, joins us now from Northland Injury Law. Eric, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and certainly appreciate the support with the podcast. And it's great having you as a sponsor. By the way, Northland Injury Law is Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, helping people with serious injuries, car accidents, work accidents, falls, other serious personal injuries. Their attorneys have been serving the Kansas City area for more than 40 years. They don't get paid unless they get money for their clients. That's right. They don't get paid unless you get paid. Northland Injury Law voted #1 accident lawyer in Kansas City. Don't wait. Get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT, HURT, to 22222. Again, if you have a case, text HURT to 22222. You can talk to Eric in the process, 816-400-HURT. You can call 816-400-4878 right now. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Again, text HURT. It's just that simple. HURT to 22222 to get connected 24/7. And Eric, thank you again for the time, as we said. And listen, would you be wanting to represent some of the people that were involved in this accident? Does this look like one that's a pretty open and shut case when you have a giant video like we've got here?
There will be settlements. I'm pretty certain of that. I don't think at this point there's any question he was involved or the other driver was involved. And it sounds like there are some serious injuries. To what extent is a question mark at the moment. And we can get into that a little bit more here as we discuss this. But yes, it would definitely meet the criteria for Northland Injury Law to represent those clients.
Well, Eric, I want to jump into the criminal side of this first, because I'm always curious with the civil case, how much the criminal aspect of it impacts the civil side of it. And first of all, it's just, what kind of timeline is reasonable to expect from something like this, even though there's video and he's claimed some kind of culpability already?
Sure. So, and as any good lawyer would do, my disclaimer will be that, #1, I'm not a Texas lawyer. And #2, I'm not a criminal defense lawyer. However, I've been a lawyer for about 30 years. I know the system. And in preparation for coming on here, I did reach out to a couple of my buddies who are longtime criminal defense lawyers to just get an idea of, if that was here, say in Missouri, what's that look like? And so, with all of that being said, Texas, so Texas, as generally speaking, is considered more stringent, tougher on crime. But even every state, it comes down to county by county. And so we look at Dallas County, which is where all of this is going down. And Dallas County is known to be stricter on the law enforcement side, but then has been criticized on the prosecution side of things as being too lenient. And just there's been, I think, issues with offenders getting released on bail, going out, committing more serious crimes. And, I think generally speaking, again, generally larger areas, your metropolitan areas, those judicial systems are usually overworked and overloaded. And that's a lot of times where you find a situation where things might go by a little easier. Now, this particular situation is obviously high profile. So I don't think that's going to be the case. But if we get into timeline, and again, everything we talk about and all the other talking head lawyers that discuss this, we're taking guesses. But generally speaking, I can answer the question that this is going to probably take months, if not over a year, to get resolved. And the reason for that is generally the more serious the crime, the more involved the whole process is. generally speaking, a defendant is going to want a jury trial for these types of charges. And, as I'm sure you all know and have discussed, Mr. Rice is facing, at the worst, his worst charge is a first-degree felony in the state of Texas. And it's aggravated assault, which is a second-degree felony, but one of the enhancers is if it's involving a motor vehicle. And so that raises it to a first-degree felony. And a first-degree felony in Texas is a 5 to 99-year sentence or life. So a really big deal. And then he has a third-degree felony that he's facing. And then I think he has like 6, essentially misdemeanor charges. So on its face, he's got some big stuff hanging over his head. And so with that, when you're a defense lawyer representing him in that capacity, you're looking at there's a discovery process. Obviously, there's an exchange of information between prosecutor and defense. And from the most simplest of things, right? Police reports, videos. Then you've got people that were injured here. So there's going to be an issue of medical documentation, because at the end of it, the defense is obviously going to want to know, and the prosecutor as well, but what's the extent of these people's injuries? And that's never an easy process, getting medical documentation. A lot of times that requires subpoenas and things like that. So that can be a bog down. And then there's going to be probably pretrial motions, and all of that just goes into it. Then let's just say the defense lawyer gets to the point where that person's ready to ask the court for a jury trial setting. In Missouri, I can tell you, if you go up to one of the counties, if you want a first setting, that means whatever that date is, you're the number one setting, you have the priority. Like right now, if we went down to Jackson County, we're talking summer of 2025. And so if you want to take something less than that and risk, getting bumped, if you want a third or fourth setting, sure, you could get something in the fall. But then you stand a high risk of getting bumped and then starting over. So realistically, this is going to take a while, and I have a feeling nothing will come of anything during the season. And that's sort of a very broad overview. And by the way, I have a good example I thought of today. We all remember Reid.
Yeah.
And, the accident he was involved in occurred in February of 2021. He was sentenced in November of 2022. So well over, obviously over a year and a half. So now these serious felony type charges can really drag on.
Eric, an important point there, because I think a lot of people watched this video, number one, and heard his attorney, Royce West, say that Rashee Rice acknowledged to police that he was driving the Lamborghini SUV, and probably view it as a little bit of cut and dry of why hasn't this process accelerated. And so the steps to get there, I think, are important to note. But recognizing that your expertise isn't civil, I did want to ask you one more question about the criminal charges, which is,
sure,
because of, it seems like the most obvious point in this would be who is driving the car. Rashee Rice has admitted that to police, according to his attorney. Do you think this is more likely because of that to wind up in a plea deal, and therefore that could shorten the time frame? And if there is a plea deal, can you envision one, given the nature of the charges that you just explained? 8 charges, one of them is a felony, 2 of them are felonies. Can you envision him avoiding jail time?
Well, so when it comes time, to discuss a possible plea agreement, they're going to look at the overall nature and extent of the entire situation. And so the fact that he did obviously, subsequently admit, I was the driver, I was involved in this, that's going to be a step in the right direction for him. They're going to look at him, his criminal history, which to my knowledge, he has none. Again, I haven't heard anything where he has any significant criminal past or anything like that. And if I'm mistaken, feel free to let me know, but that's my understanding. He's a 24-year-old. I'm sure a good defense lawyer is going to argue things about, the mental maturity of males and, the circumstances that this young man finds himself in, which is, I've got some money now and, didn't think it through and thought this would be fun. And unfortunately, like I think was his comment, it's an accident. And I'm sure it's going to come down the road to some type of an apology coming forth. They're going to obviously consider at the end of this the seriousness and the permanency of injuries to the people that were involved. And, if people do make a good recovery, again, we don't know the details of the injuries. I've heard concussion. I've heard broken bones. I mean, these are serious things. But again, we don't know what that looks like long term. The other thing that will probably play into all of it is insurance, because it's a big fact. It's a big factor. If there's insurance on the vehicle that covered Rice for these injuries and the damages, the medical bills, lost wages, if there are any, the harms, the losses, I mean, just all of it. If there's insurance or other money to provide a recovery to these people and get them compensated, that's going to go into it as well. And so at some point, you have to assume there's going to be plea negotiations. And, again, using Britt Reid just as an example, even though it was a judge ordered situation, but, his maximum possibility he was facing was 7 years. He got a 3-year sentence. And, very similar in circumstances as far as a very seriously injured person. But he had a background. And so, that would obviously play into it as well. And here, like I say, we kind of have on our face, the face of it, a young guy, no real history. It looks a lot like an accident, a stupid accident. That's the other thing I was going to point out. There's a difference between reckless and intentional, stupid and heinous. And, this looks a lot like really, really bad stupidity.
Yeah.
And so all of that's going to play in at some point in negotiations. And because the prosecutor has to decide, what is the likelihood if I get in front of a jury that I'm going to be able to make these things stick? And so I would be shocked if somewhere down the road something didn't happen.
And then the other question I wanted to ask you, Eric, was specifically about the civil cases. There's one trial date that's set for December. Will Rashee Rice be required to appear in a trial if there is a civil case that's ongoing? And also, just how does his public figure nature of this affect these civil suits?
Yeah, so in theory, again, I can't really talk about Texas and what their requirements are. A defendant doesn't have to show up for a civil trial. It's not a good look. I would be probably happy. Well, unless I just had a really jerk of a defendant on the other side, and I was really anxious to get that person on the stand because I figure the jury's just going to hate him. The other side of that is they don't show up. It looks like they don't care, and they have some lawyer that's defending it for them, and that's not a good look. So whether he's required or not, that's another question. But boy, I would think he would want to be there. Now, having said all that, it's a civil matter. And again, I'm sure arguments can be made. We need to continue this case until such and such date when the defendant is available, because, in December,
right,
he's going to be in the middle of big stuff.
That was my question. Where are judges on a continuation? Do they tend to say, okay, you have a job, whether it's football player, actor, or just, I don't know, what a wicked tuna fisherman that's going to be gone for 6 weeks? Like, do they expect you, this takes priority, you get here, you figure out your job on your own, or do they tend to try to work with you based upon what is best for your job, knowing somebody's coming for money in a civil suit? So the more money you've made, more likely you are to be able to handle any kind of payoff. Where would the judge be as far as in your mind? And I know every judge is different, but do they tend to want to work with the individual and what do you think a continuance would be something that he would get?
My answer would be yes. He'll probably get it continued. As a lawyer that represents injured people, we're always the ones that are trying to push it forward. Because obviously insurance companies and defendants are holding on to the money, and they don't mind having things drag out. Meanwhile, we're on the side of let's get this going, let's get this wrapped up. And I lose continuance motions all the time because, again, if you have legitimate reasons, it is a civil trial, and judges are generally going to at least give a party one. Now the problem is if you get into where you're trying for 2 or 3, you're going to have a problem. But I think if he tries to get it continued, it'll happen.
Eric, you mentioned the insurance aspect of this, but I think a lot of people are kind of interested in how this could affect Rashee Rice's pocketbook. And so does the insurance supersede all that, or is he on the hook for some level of money here? Like, you do this all the time. What kind of, ballpark estimate do you think, a percentage you could give of what he'd have to pay if he had some damages here?
Okay, so it's a little bit of a multi-layered analysis. So today it's
complicated with the legal process.
Yeah. Got to have lawyers. Everybody hates lawyers until they need one, So, okay. So I looked today at a Lamborghini rental place in Dallas. I have no idea if it's the one where he rented his, but I wanted to try to figure out, when you rent a Lamborghini, right? I'm in my mind going, they have to require that you have some insurance for all kinds of obvious reasons. And so I came across a place, they had all their agreement right online. And that particular place said you have to have $300,000 of bodily injury insurance for an accident. Okay. So we know that if that's probably standard amongst these high-end car rental places, we know there's maybe that out there. Now, the problem is we have 2 lawsuits that are filed. I believe both of the people that were injured have put in the legal pleadings. So you file a document, right, to create a lawsuit in the court system. And in Texas, it looks like you basically have to put in there in your initial legal pleading some level of money that you're claiming. And so, for example, you have to put in there that it's either $250,000 or less, $250,000 to $1 million, or more than $1 million. Well, both of these people put $1 million, and one of them is also seeking like $10 million in punitive damages. So again, now that's a pleading that's something that was filed. It doesn't necessarily represent true facts at this moment. I shouldn't say true facts, but it's, it's a requirement of the court. And so whether or not it's going to bear out to that extent, that's another story altogether. However, if these truly are serious life-altering injuries, then $300,000 is not going to get it done. Yeah. And so the question becomes, what happens at that point? Well, a person that's making the claim has the option. They could either, if the insurance company comes up and says, here's our $300,000, you have to sign a release of Rashee Rice, and the rental place, whoever, right? You got to release everything. You can have the $300,000. If they want to go with that and be done with it, fine. If they don't, and they want to keep pushing this, then they would be trying to go after Rashee Rice's personal wealth, personal assets, income, whatever that looks like. The problem with that is you run the risk, sure, I think he's making like $1.5 million a year, 1.6, whatever, which all sounds good and fine. But what if you get some multi-million-dollar judgment against him? Well, he'll go file for bankruptcy, and you'll have a piece of paper that says he owes you a bunch of money and it's worthless.
Right. Yeah.
So,
so you want to get what you can get, but not end up great. You got the judgment, but you get nothing for it.
Yes. And again, we don't know, right? Maybe he's already had a good advisor and somebody that said, hey man, you're out there, you got stuff now. You need to have at least $1 million of coverage, liability, and maybe $1 million umbrella or whatever. I mean, maybe there's plenty of insurance coverage out there and it never becomes an issue. But if it's not, then he could be facing some serious financial issues because of what I just said. He could be getting pushed towards some kind of a judgment that could lead him into a bad situation. The other thing is, whether you look at it from his side or the injured people's side, what if this messes up his football career? And all of a sudden, he doesn't have this kind of money coming in. Now you've also got a problem trying to collect from him, and he's got a problem because he doesn't have any money. So
yeah, the victims who are looking to get paid need him to be productive on the football field. So they have a vested interest in him playing football. To go back to one of our previous questions, it's good for the lawsuit for him to be playing productive football and earning a living so that they can get as much of it as they're seeking, or as the court system would say they warrant getting out of the lawsuit.
Yeah, assuming insurance is not sufficient. I mean, all this assumes insurance. Our number one goal as a personal injury lawyer is we hope, you need three things for a case to be viable and worth pushing down the road. And that is a serious injury, somebody else is at fault, and money. And insurance is the number one source of that. And I mean, right now, we definitely have two of the three of those components. We probably have some amount of insurance more than, most states. I don't know what Texas is. Missouri, a driver only has to have $25,000 of coverage to be legally on the road. And, that's not going to go anywhere very quickly at all. But like I said, I looked up the rental agreement. This particular company, not necessarily the one he used.
Right.
They had 6 figures required.
Yeah, 300,000. All right. So that pretty much lays it out. Eric, hey, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Thanks for giving us the insights. And now we sit back and watch. I think a lot of folks thought, hey, maybe we'll get this all cleared up before training camp. Now, it looks like.
No, it's good. Yeah. You may have me back at some point.
We'll have an update. Eric joins us part 2. We'll be looking forward to that. Hey, Eric, thanks so much. We appreciate the time. And we do. We look forward to talking to you again on down the road.
You bet, guys. Take care. Have a great night.
All right, Eric Barlett there joining us from Northland Injury Law. And, of course, if you have a case right now, you can text HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT. and you can speak to Eric, speak to his great staff right there. They'll be happy to take care of you. Google 5-star rated, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, helping people with serious injuries. More than 40 years experience serving Kansas City. They don't get paid unless they get money for their clients. Voted #1 accident lawyer in Kansas City. It's Northland Injury Law. You can check them out right now. Either call, like I said, 24/7, 816-400-HURT, HURT, or text HURT, HURT, to 22222. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Jeff, just kind of your thoughts on hearing that timeline and maybe some of the dollars there?
Not surprising. I used to cover police when I first started in journalism, so I'm used to the things he was talking about, but I think it's really good for our audience and, people who haven't really followed these kind of cases to understand just how complex they are. And even when you have like what seems like a black and white, open and shut type situation with the video and the admission of responsibility, that there's still a lot of layers to this. And so I was really intrigued by the insurance part of it. I had not really, I know it's an element of it, but not really understanding some of the ways that would work. And also just kind of, just his understanding of law enforcement being more strict in Texas versus the prosecution part of it. So I think those two were my big takeaways.
Yeah. Sam, how about I thought it was a great point that he made. And I hadn't even, connected the dots. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, but I didn't connect them about the Reid timeline, to go take a look at that and how long that took, because I was kind of under the opinion that this was going to, maybe wrap up, early in the season or something along those lines. And I think the question, and Eric's not an expert in studying Roger Goodell and when he wants to lay things down. I think most people thought, okay, well, we're going to get this done. We'll get it done during the summer. Roger Goodell will have everything he has, and then whatever suspension's coming their way will be laid out there. But this does look like this is just going to sit hanging over, at least the legal aspect is going to hang over the Chiefs and Rashee Rice for the entire year, right? And the question is, will Goodell make a move to pull a suspension before we even get to the end of the legal process?
Yeah, I was going to say, who would really not have enjoyed that last 30 minutes is Roger Goodell, because this may mean he might have to make a decision before the legal process plays out, which is not his preferential order of operations. He likes to wait for the legal process to play out, and then he makes the decision on the suspension, recognizing that the NFL does its own investigation after that part plays out. They claim they don't want to interfere with the legal process, and so that's why they wait. But it certainly makes you wonder, especially with the Chiefs playing on the NFL's opening night, whether or not Roger Goodell is going to put him on the commissioner's exempt list if it plays out. Eric was very clear that, a plea deal can change things, that could potentially come at any time. But what was most educational with that is I knew this process was not going to go quick, but still I didn't know exactly why. And him explaining that getting the medical information from everyone involved, this was not one victim. There are multiple lawsuits that he's already facing. And so for all of that to have to, all that aspects takes time. Like we were educated on why this process, not just that it's going to take a while, but why this process typically takes a long time. I will say that, you mentioned the Britt Reid. What we have here that we didn't have with Britt Reid is the video, right? And we have his lawyer telling us at a press conference that Rashee Rice told the police that he was driving that car, driving the Lamborghini SUV, which I think it was the Texas Department of Transportation estimated was 119 miles an hour. That's why I think in a lot of people's minds, this would be a quicker process. And again, that's why it's important to learn exactly why that's not the only criteria that accelerates this process typically.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point. The video, I mean, if you remember the Ray Rice incident came down where he struck his fiance, and it was like, okay, we're just going to kind of do this. Then the video got out there, and it was so graphic that Roger Goodell was like, well, wait a minute, hang on, we screwed up. And then Ray Rice has never been heard from in the NFL again. He was thrown completely out of the league. And I think that's the part on Rashee Rice is the video. The video is like shocking to see, and you see just how violent the accident was, just how much faster they were driving, that you would think that, the only strategy would be, Jeff, to go get a plea deal. Like, we can't win. There's nothing in that looks good for Rashee Rice. Yeah. And the video is so damaging that whatever it takes, you got to try to make this go away and settle probably for more money than you want to, probably more money than they would get in a trial. I don't know, maybe I'm over my skis, obviously, and talking about this, but I think the incentive there is to settle.
Yeah, I think the sooner Rashee Rice can get this resolved, the easier it's going to be for him and the Chiefs, really. I mean, Roger Goodell, to what Sam's talking about here, doesn't need to have a resolution in the legal system to suspend somebody. That's already been a precedent that's been set. I mean, the same thing happened with Kareem Hunt, when he had video come out as far as his situation. So
and Justin Ross last year, sorry to interrupt, Jeff, but Justin Ross last year was on the commissioner's exempt before his resolution was set either.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's already the video and the admission of responsibility is already enough, I think, for Roger Goodell to do something. It's just a matter of when it happens. And yeah, maybe a plea deal can make that a little bit easier to handle, but it's just, I don't think he's going to be able to run out the clock and be able to I'll just stay in the legal system forever. They'll never be able to suspend me until I'm done. I imagine that he'll be suspended at some point this year.
We're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot cuts down on those accidents, keeps your parking lot as safe as possible, keeps you focused on your business. That's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Online at GannAsphalt.com. Jail time. So we think now that's definitely in play. If you play it out to where, certainly on the civil side, you can wait till the season's over, and maybe even the criminal side as well. Maybe that jail time will be encompassed in the off season and can be handled. But do we think? I thought it was interesting. He said law enforcement in Texas, very strict, but sometimes big cities, people can get out. Although this is a high profile case, we think there's jail time coming here when it's all said and done, Sam?
Well, I mean, I definitely think it's a possibility. I actually think that's one component of all of this that has not been considered enough in the narrative of Rashee Rice, because it's been so much football centric. And look, I get it, because the people that are interested in this are football fans, right? But I mean, it's 2 felonies. And what Eric said that I didn't realize is that one of them, because it involves the motor vehicle, can be up to a 1st degree felony. So like that's a considerable charge that he's facing, and he's facing 7 others as well. And so I think if this was not a football player, we'd really be considering how much time is he facing. And I've been surprised that's been absent from the conversation.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. And when he said that, 5 to 99 years, did he say to life? Did he add to life?
No, 5 to 99 was what
5
he said.
to 99?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
5 to 99 years. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, he won't get that. I mean, I have friends in the legal system who've talked about 180 days being realistic if there's jail time coming down.
Did they think he would get jail time?
They felt like these people know people in Texas. And so that was the reaction he got from his people, talking to his people, without knowing the facts and knowing how the whole thing's been played out so far. Yeah, like 180 days they wouldn't be surprised that happened if he got jail time.
Okay,
was that 6 months?
Yeah,
but it's a real thing. I mean, when you start talking about this level of felonies, and I know everybody wants to be an armchair lawyer and act like you just plead stuff down or whatever. I mean, the prosecutors have to deal with that video too, and so if they're going out and making rulings or making deals or making decisions based off, we just want to, move the process along and not have all this paperwork piling up around us and get us off our desk. Well, somebody in those cars are going to be complaining about what they saw. Much different situation if it's like nobody sees what happens, right? Or nobody knows who this guy is. But because this is on Good Morning America, these people are elected. They have their own agendas. I imagine that it won't be so easy to just dismiss what he did down there.
By the way, we'd like to welcome a brand new sponsor. Minsky's Pizza is joining the Red, Gold, and Bold just in time for Father's Day. 2 iconic KC brands, Minsky's Pizza and Joe's Kansas City Barbecue, collaborate to create a one-of-a-kind gourmet specialty pizza. By the way, Adam Dravetta, who runs my radio show, is counting down the days to the release of this pizza. By the way, he literally has the days. He's marking it off on a calendar. You can give the special dad in your life what he really wants this Father's Day, the gourmet masterpiece. It starts with the Minsky's original crust sprinkled with Joe's world-famous French fry seasoning, further flavored up with Joe's Kansas City barbecue sauce, Wisconsin mozzarella cheese, topped with a mix of Joe's slow-smoked brisket, juicy pulled pork, tender burnt ends. It doesn't get any more Kansas City than this. The Minsky's Joe's Barbecue Pizza is available at all 17 KC Metro and Lawrence Minsky's locations starting this Thursday, June 13th. 2 days, tomorrow and then one more day, people. It's only good, though, June 13th to June 30th or until supplies run out. And that's what happened at my Minsky's. They ran out. They sold out of it all before we got to the end of it. They're open every Sunday and available for dine-in, carry-out, curbside, and delivery each and every day, including Father's Day. So give Dad what he wants. Give him some Minsky's Joe's Barbecue Pizza. You can get your Joe's Barbecue Pizza this week at Minsky's. Let's hear. I want to ask if this helped or hurt. I want to play the comments. I played this on my radio show. I want to play it for you guys and tell me. This was the question of Rashee Rice about, what he's learned from this and where he thinks, things are going with this legal case, but kind of where he's at now after having such a tumultuous offseason.
I learned so much from that. All I could do was, mature and continue to grow from that. And this is, a step in, a better direction for me.
I mean, I think those are the comments that you would expect to hear, right? Does anybody think that was a rough one? We should point out, Sam, that was your guys who were there asking the questions, correct?
Yeah, Jesse Newell from the Kansas City Star, but also Harold Coons from Fox 4 that went out to a football camp on Saturday morning and asked him those questions.
And what do we think? Like, that's the first of all, I'm surprised he was there. I'm sure the idea was, let's get out to a football camp. Let's do something in the public. Let's do and it is a positive. I want to be clear. Chiefs players going out and having a camp with kids. I remember how big a deal it was to have NFL. I went to some of those NFL camps when I was a kid, and it made my day to be talking to NFL players. So it is a great thing that they do. I want to be crystal clear about that. And I'm sure the idea was, okay, this will look good, Jeff. This gets you out in the community working with kids. But is putting him in front of a microphone right now really the best thing?
No, and I would probably bet you that his lawyer told him, don't do anything that would get you in front of a microphone. Let other people talk. It's okay to back away. And again, he's a young guy. He probably wants to put a positive face out there, put a positive spin on who he is. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it was horrible, but you're never going to say anything in that situation that's going to make people forget what you did. That's going to take time. That's going to take effort and energy and a lot of good faith. And so I do think you can come across as being too cool, if that makes sense. You come across as thinking, well, I can just, charisma my way through this. I can just make you like me because of who I am and look how good all the good works I'm doing around me. So I think in that way, it probably wasn't the best move for him. But again, once you're out there, the microphone's in your face, it's all bets are off.
Yeah. No, I agree. Sam, how about the comments? And I couldn't find the audio for it, but he went on to say accidents and stuff like that happen. But all you can do is move forward and walk around being the same person. Try to be positive so that everybody can feel your love and your great energy. I don't know about you. Listen, the way I reacted to this was, you're a 22-year-old kid. This was not, especially reading it. We've seen a lot of the politics where they show the actual word-for-word quote, and you're like, where is this coming from? Like, who would actually utter this? We don't realize sometimes we do sound like, if you read what we say, sounds okay when you have hand gestures and facial expressions, and then you read it, and you're like, God, I was a moron. What the hell was I babbling about? So I want to be clear. I don't want to go over the top, taking a quote and reading it and saying, well, this is what he meant, okay? But it isn't the best. And this is why, to Jeff's point, Sam, I think somebody saying stay away from the mics was probably right. Stay away from the reporters would have been right. Accidents and stuff like that happen. That cannot sit well with the judge. It doesn't sit well with fans. It certainly doesn't sit well with the victims, because the accident didn't just happen. He drove 119 miles an hour racing somebody else in a car that he had paid for. This didn't just happen. I don't think that's the gist he was trying to get across, but it really looks bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like, I mean, if I had written it as an accident, an editor would change it and call it a crash, because it's not. It's literally not an accident. It's factually incorrect to call it an accident.
Okay.
It also just it undermines the gravity of the situation, which was a conscious decision to go rent that car, a conscious decision to allegedly drive, 119 miles an hour down the highway and also rent the car for your buddy so he could do the same and there could be a race. Those are the allegations that Rashee Rice is facing. And I also think it feeds into the bigger picture story of all this with Rashee Rice moving forward, which is, I totally agree with Jeff. There's nothing. I mean, I'm going through my head thinking, what could Rashee Rice have said to where I would have been like, oh, I feel so much better about the situation? And the answer is nothing. There's nothing that Rashee Rice could have said. And by the way, he still is facing, as we just heard Eric describe, these criminal proceedings, these civil proceedings. I know a lot of people would have expected an apology that could amount to an admission. So he's walking a tightrope there. And I agree, he did not walk it well. The best scenario is not to even step foot onto it. But the bigger thing for me is what Rashee Rice should learn from this situation is the consequences of it. And those aren't just financial, those aren't just legal, but we saw that the subsequent incident that happens later in the summer with the photographer in Dallas alleging that he punched him in the face. That witness later recants that story, signs an affidavit saying that's not actually what happened. But to be clear, that's not who decides to drop the charges. The police department still makes that call. But my point in saying that is what Rashee Rice should understand now is he is a target. Whether that incident was his responsibility or not, the spotlight on him has grown to his own fault. And therefore, that is part of the consequences that he faces now. And the same applies when he steps in front of the microphone now. There is no easy day at the microphone for Rashee Rice anymore. Everything that he does is now under a microscope that it was not before. And that should be part of the lesson that he learned from the photography incident and also from the comments on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt about it. By the way, just a reminder, we're brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project coming with a written warranty. GAN Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses, whether it's concrete bumpers, signage, seal coating. I know a lot of people wait around. All of a sudden, it's the fall wind, like, oh, we got to get our parking lot seal coated. And they want to call in. When that weather drops, when that temperature drops, I should say, you can't get it done. Go ahead and get that done right now. You got plenty of good weather. Get booked right now with GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Call 816-484-3338 or find them online at ganasphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot. That's GAN Asphalt and Concrete. One more piece of sound I want to play. I want to play Andy Reid and get your reaction to this. This is Andy Reid. It came up. I think Adam Teicher from ESPN asked this question. Information started coming out that teams were aware of a shooting incident. Just to describe it, that there was a rift, the way I've seen it reported on one side, that it was over a girl,
like a girlfriend,
involving Rice, and it got pulled out. It says, let's see, multiple teams learned during the pre-draft process about an alleged incident involving Rice while he was at SMU. Rice believed former SMU basketball player Kendrick Davis was seeing Rice's girlfriend. Rice and some of his friends, per the specific information gathered by at least one team, this is a team's information, went to an SMU basketball game. Rice or someone with him, per the specific information gathered by at least one team, fired multiple bullets into an empty car belonging to Kendrick Davis. That's the incident. Multiple sources expressed a belief that every team was aware of the incident before the draft, including the Chiefs. Kansas City drafted Rice in round 2, as we all know. He had the season he had last year. This is Andy Reid. The subject got brought up by Adam Teicher. This was Andy Reid about 4 days ago.
Yeah, the way I'd leave it with you, Adam, is we knew enough to draft them, and then we just went with the process, and we found that it was satisfactory for us. So.
You said we knew enough to draft him. Can you elaborate on what you meant by that?
Yeah, I'll probably leave it right there. Yeah, I'll leave it right there for you.
That's right. Who wants a cheeseburger?
Yeah, Adam. Yeah, can you elaborate on that? I'll leave it right there.
That's right.
Sorry, I do want to. Sorry to interrupt here. I do want to point out one thing on this, which is, look, the Star had become privy to this allegation as well. A team being aware of an allegation does not make that allegation true. Like we need to state that journalistically up front that this was a couple steps away from, for example, something the Kansas City Star would have printed, because a team being aware of it does not make it true. Having said that, this allegation is out there, as you mentioned. Adam, pressed Andy Reid on it. I think. I know we probably all have our take on it. My take is, there's a reason he probably didn't want to elaborate on it. But I just wanted to clarify that point.
No, I think it's great. And let me clarify. Pro Football Talk. I read that from Pro Football Talk.
Yeah.
By the way, who is contracted by NBC, an NFL partner. Jeff works for the NFL. He works for NFL.com. I mean, they put the story out there. It's not a story I had heard. And I've said this before. I talked to some people, and somebody, one of the things we heard was, good player, bad dude, right? They said, yeah, there was some stuff with a gal. I didn't know the specific details, but I'd heard there was a girlfriend thing, and they're like, yeah, a good player, bad dude. That's what was quoted to me by somebody in and around the personnel game of the NFL. And so you're right. It is. It is not a proven fact, right? But these are the kind of things that teams want to look at.
Yeah.
And
and Andy also didn't dispute it, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
He said we felt comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And look, I will point out there are things that have looked really bad. The Tyreek Hill thing. When the tape came out about the Tyreek Hill, the Chiefs said they stood by him. And I'm here to tell you, and I think there are teams, there are owners, there are general managers, there are coaches that'd be like, we got to get out of this. We got to get away from it. Now, we're talking about an extraordinary player, and I think you're willing to do more when you're Tyreek Hill at that time. But as time went on, and I can tell you from the work I did in speaking with people, they seem to know that there was more to the tape, and they seem to know that eventually it would get out there. And I think when you heard the whole tape, it sounded very differently than the snippet that was played by the one television station in Kansas City. There is a possibility, and I'm sure the question is that I think we'd all like to know, and I don't think they're ever going to answer is, did they question Rashee Rice about it, and what did he say?
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what you'd really want to know? Like, let me ask you, Jeff, what would you have wanted to hear from Rashee Rice to make you feel comfortable to go ahead and draft him? If you'd heard that, hey, we heard this story, here's what I heard happen, tell me, what would you have wanted to hear that would have made you comfortable drafting him in the second round? Because we all know there's taking a guy off the board, and then there's like kind of the fourth round. Day 3 is usually like, whoa, okay, now it's time to start taking some of those personality risks. It's 4th, 5th round. That's when Tyreek Hill went in the 5th round. Like, we're not going to use a second on him, but we'll use a 5. They used a second on him. What would you have needed to hear?
Well, I think the first thing you want to hear is it wasn't me. I wasn't the one pulling the trigger. The second thing you want to hear is, well, I was running with the wrong people. I made some bad choices. I've learned from it. I'm going to do better. In a lot of ways, they remember this kid who was drafted in the NBA out of Alabama last year, Brandon Miller. That sounds like a story very similar to what happened with him, where he was with somebody or they took a gun to someplace, someone shot and killed somebody or wounded somebody.
He gave him his gun, and then they fired in a car, and I think it did kill the woman, I believe. Yeah, and so this sounds very similar to that. And so if he was able to convey some level of, I'm not responsible for what happened, and it was a heat of the moment type thing, I think that would have sold it for him. But ultimately, this is not a game or a league filled with angels. Right. There's a lot of guys in the NFL, pro sports period, who have checkered past, who've done stupid things, who've had run-ins with the law. And a lot of times what gets you over with the team is just how much will that come back to bite you in the end. And so now this is coming back to bite the Chiefs because he did something else stupid. Yeah. Sam, 5 or 6 years ago, marijuana is being legalized all over the country, but 5 or 6 years ago, there was a player. I was talking to somebody, a personnel guy in the league, and I said, hey, I hear that guy, people tell me, a lot of weed, do you worry about that? Do you worry about a suspension? And I was told, I don't even think the NFL actually tests anymore. Like, everybody does it. That's where we're at. I bring that up not to talk about other issues that the Chiefs have had, because they had a couple of guys arrested for it. I bring it up like that is the culture today. So much so that it is now being legalized. I think the reality is the gun culture is one of male youths in this country. That is a reality. And if you think you're going to put 53 20-something-year-old men together and none of them have ever had some kind of brush with a gun, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when the Chiefs had this, first of all, if they knew about the incident, they would have asked Rashee Rice about it. Obviously, they got a satisfactory enough answer if they did ask him about it. To where they were comfortable enough to draft him. But I think it's NFL teams, when they evaluate these situations, are what they're really evaluating is how's that guy going to fit into my locker room? Am I going to have to deal with this after he's a part of my organization? I think that they've increasingly grown comfortable with these sorts of backgrounds. And the question that they're trying to get at is this going to be a repeat incident to where I am, after winning a second straight Super Bowl championship, going to be spending my offseason trying to figure out if I have my number one wide receiver?
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's wrap with this. What do we think? How does Rashee Rice's career end in Kansas City, in his NFL career? What do you see in your crystal ball, Jeff?
I do not see him in Kansas City. I look at, they spent a first-round pick on Xavier Worthy. The timeline for his contract is going to run right up against Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis. So we've got some big decisions to make there financially. And, there's a lot of good receivers out there. And so you can always find somebody else to do what he does. It's not like you're talking about Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. So I imagine unless he really blows up in the next couple of years, I think he's going to be playing somewhere else after his contract expires. Okay,
but you put him in Kansas City for the 4 years.
He'll be here for 4 years.
And then walks in free agency. All right, yep. Sam, how's it wrap? Yeah, and then he continues to play football somewhere else, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay, pretty good career. Good.
I think he'll be okay. I think he did great for his first year. It would not surprise me if that's where he stays the rest of his career, around a 900-yard, maybe 1,000-yard receiver in a good year.
Whenever somebody has a good year and everybody thinks there's like so much more in front of them, I remind them of Mark Clayton in Tampa. Yeah. But 1,000 yards as a rookie and never sniffed it again. There are some that their first year is their best year, and we'll see. There's somebody, as somebody pointed out, not a lot of competition for balls around him last year, so somebody had to get it. Sam, what do you think? What's it end up being?
I think pretty similarly as Jeff as far as Chiefs' career, except for I do think he'll be more productive, I think, than Jeff does, because I think his best fit is like a team in Kansas City that not only throws the ball frequently, but throws the ball short. He's not a deep pass receiver. He's a guy that catches the ball short, and most of his gains are after the catch. He's really good after the catch. And so I think he's a really good fit in Kansas City. So I still think even if he's only here for 4 years, it's going to be his best 4 years on a per-game productivity.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he works that kind of Travis Kelce zone, and the more Kelce recedes, the more he will increase and kind of become that safety blanket there out of the slot and working the intermediate route. He's going to be pretty productive. I think he's really good. He's tough. That may get him hurt because he takes hits. He doesn't go down. He might try to figure out some self-preservation. But this case is going to be big. Has he matured? Has he learned from this? Does he turn things around and get things going in the right direction? We've seen people get things going, have a rough start and get things going. But I would tend to think that, some of those comments make me think, I don't know that he's learned the lesson yet. There may be some more problems. And I don't even know that he gets through the first 4 years. Like, he's got to really grow up. And, again, I don't want to make too much of it. And I think you can, off the cuff, not ready for an answer. He wasn't reading a prepared statement from an attorney. So I don't want to read too much into it. But he missed the contrition. He missed the I'm sorry, looking to make up for it and do all that his lawyer was saying earlier. He missed that piece, and that makes me wonder if he's really learned the lesson, or are we just waiting for the next incident? I think only time will tell. We'll see how this all plays out. All right, don't forget, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Kansas City's best. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot. I want to thank our friends at Northland Injury Law as well. If you're hurt in an accident, they have you covered. You just heard our man Eric Barlett from us. Their attorneys have been serving Kansas City for more than 40 years. You can call 816-400-HURT and get in touch with someone right now, 816-400-HURT, or text HURT, H-U-R-T, to 22222. Coming up on our next Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, we're going to talk about where the Chiefs dynasty fits amongst the dynasties of all time. We'll do that next time. We hope you'll join us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.